I have great pleasure in welcoming Saurabh Gupta, Director of Product at Ultraleap, to this Oshua conversation. Welcome, Saurabh.
Thank you.
Saurabh, you have the global responsibility for OH market segment at Ultraleap, and you develop and execute strategies for enabling Ultraleap's spatial interaction technology adoption. You have been with Barco, a global Indian technology, before you joined Ultraleap.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Welcome once again to Oshua Conversation. So, Ultraleap is a company that is relatively new to the Indian OH market in terms of what the company is about. So, at the outset, if you could tell us a little bit about Ultraleap.
Sure. Yeah. So, Raju, it's a pleasure to be here. It's good to meet you. And I want to talk a little bit about who we are and what we do. Right. So, Ultraleap is a technology startup. We're based out of Bristol in the UK, but we have, I'm based out of the Mountain View in California, the Mountain View office. And I have, as you said, the responsibility for Ultraleap's products and solutions in the out-of-home market. We started out as Ultra Haptics. We started out as a haptics company. Not how much your viewers are familiar with haptics, but haptics is the sensation of touch. We all feel it. We all know about haptics. We may not know the term, but it's all in our cell phones, right? When you send a message and you get this little vibration, that's the haptic feedback. And it's we are mostly familiar with haptics through our peripherals that we use. So cell phones in the VR environment, peripherals that you hold, all of these things. But what we were able to do is to leverage ultrasound and deliver the sense of haptics, but in mid-air, using ultrasound, which is a very interesting concept, because what we wanted to do was we're looking at it from sort of a wider view on how does interactivity look like in the future, right? We all are used to using peripherals to carry out tasks or interact with machines. But in the future, as things get more connected, as data becomes more ubiquitous, and the data speeds become more ubiquitous, you'll have more and more smart devices, which means that your environment around you could enable seamless integration of physical and digital, right? That's how we started. The key thing for us was all about interactivity using your hands and providing that level of feedback while you're interacting with content, digital content or digital interfaces, gives that level of memorability, but also a sense of feedback for task execution and completion. So that's how we started. We started around 6 years ago. And a fundamental piece of our solution was being able to understand where the user's hands are in space to be able to trigger ultrasound to hit the hand. We were using a technology called Leap Motion, which is a hand tracking technology. And we made an acquisition of Leap Motion last year, and now we rebranded ourselves to Ultraleap. And we offer two types of solutions. One is hand tracking only, which is using hand gestures to be able to control digital content, but then also as an add-on to that, providing that level of tactile haptic feedback in mid-air to augment that human-machine interaction using spatial interaction hand gestures. So that, in a nutshell, is our technology and what we do. How we see it applied in different environments is specific to the use case, right? In out of home, what we are trying to focus on is immersive experiences. How do you enable interactive touch points that are not only add on to the brand message, but also provide an engaging and immersive and memorable experience for consumers that lead to a uptick in brand metrics from an engagement and immersiveness perspective. The other two sort of focus areas for us are in automotive. In automotive, what we are trying to do is to bring haptic and spatial interaction technologies into the car, which means that currently in most cars, you have a dash panel with controls and interfaces, which are primarily driven by touchscreens. But we're going beyond the touchscreen to look at what are the more logical and natural ways to interact, which have less of an impact on driver distraction. So that's another vertical that we are focusing on. And the third one is all about AR and VR and spatial computing. So integrating our hand tracking technology in the VR and AR environments with headsets that allow for a natural human hand to be present in the scene without needing peripherals or any wearables. So these are the three core focus areas for us. I look after the out-of-home market vertical.
Wonderful, Saurabh. That's a great introduction to the company, and I think this is really very interesting. More particular to the OH segment, and where you have already done some very interesting projects for Ocean Outdoor and for the cinema networks. So tell us a little bit about the works that have been executed.
Yeah, so in out of home, I mean, as you know, and you talked to Lee a little while ago, and I followed that interview. Out of home as a market has been growing over the last 5 to 7 years, and the primary growth factor within out of home is digital. I mean, technology is being implemented in this scenario. The gap between digital advertising and out-of-home advertising in terms of the methods, in terms of the creative, in terms of measurement, in terms of attribution, all that gap is reducing now. So as more and more screens get activated, that's a positive thing. A lot of digital place-based networks are coming up, and they are getting more sophisticated from a technology standpoint. But at the same time, if you look at out of home or any of the traditional advertising mediums, they're primarily a broadcast medium, which is, you know, one to many. Where we think the interesting piece comes in is for brands wanting to tell a comprehensive story, they have to include some sort of mechanisms that allow them to create these touch points with consumers at an individual level that allows them to influence and allows them to create a relationship with the consumer. And I think that's where our technology comes in. We are able to augment the interactive brand experience through gamification, through immersive experiences, and that these can live within a digital place-based network as immersive touch points. So if you think of from a story arc perspective, from a brand's outlook, you want to communicate a story, but in the end, you also want to have individual touch points with consumers that make that emotional connection with your brands. And that's the piece that we are focused on. That how do you look at it out of home as a collective medium where you have the ability to reach millions of consumers, but also within that continuum, provide these touch points or immersive experience points that augment the brand's story. And we did a lot of work in this area. Last year, we did a pilot at a cinema location in the United States. And this is the hypothesis that we wanted to test. Does interactivity and immersive based interactivity augment the consumer experience and also has a measurable impact on brand metrics? And as a result of that study that ran for 3 months with one of the largest movie studios in the world, promoting 3 of their titles, we saw a huge uptake in metrics when it comes to attention rates or brand favorability, awareness, and recall. These are all positive indicators that our technology and solution has an accelerant aspect to the brand messaging. With that level of study has been really, really productive in us getting adoption from big name DPNs such as CEN or Cinema Entertainment Network, as well as Ocean Outdoor, which is a media buying agency. And now we're starting to see a lot of brands and marketers as well as operators take notice. And that's what our sort of next phase is, to leverage all the work that we've done to prove the value and the value proposition. And now we're in the sort of the adoption and enablement phase.
All right. Your solutions, do you think that the applications are broadly in the controlled indoor environment, or do you also see the opportunities for outdoor?
Yeah, I mean, outdoor keeps coming up quite a bit because if you
Okay.
think about it, a lot of out of home is outdoor, right? I mean, you
Yes,
think about
indeed.
billboards and stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
and transit stations, billboards, shopping malls. A lot of
Right.
the network is placed in outdoor settings.
Hmm.
Primarily, the way we are approaching it, Rajiv, is all about how do we create these interactive touch points. Obviously, indoor is more applicable from a solutioning standpoint, but we are also
Right.
looking at outdoor solutions. There's many use cases out there. We are obviously more applicable indoors at the moment, but we are also
Right.
actively working on outdoor solutions.
Okay. What kind of media owners would typically be the ones that you would work with?
So we've sort of adopted an ecosystem enablement strategy. So
Hmm.
if you look at the out of home ecosystem, you have brands, then you have
Yes.
creative agencies, media buyers, then you
Right.
have at the more physical operational level, you have the
Media
operators, but also
operators.
exactly so media
Right.
operators, but also systems integrators, right? What
Right.
we've been able to do is we've spent the last year evangelizing our
Hmm.
technology, proving the
Okay.
value proposition, but also
Uh-huh.
spending a lot of time enabling creative agencies with tools, integrators with options to understand our technology and be able to deploy it. So from my perspective, we are going to work at all levels of the ecosystem to provide
Okay.
the fastest and the easiest path for adoption.
Hmm.
Media agencies specifically can leverage our, once a network is put in place, can leverage our touch points to weave interactive experiences within the broader creative canvas. So if you think
Okay.
about, if you're telling a story, for example, if you're telling a story about a new product or a new brand message, you can have a broader outlook in terms of how you want to communicate the message to the broader consumer audience, but also create these immersive touch points for more information or for an augmented branded experience. And
Right.
media buyers will be able to weave these two threads together, creating these sort of one-to-many, but also one-to-one type experiences with our technology.
Okay, that's fantastic. Coming to the two areas that you've touched upon, working with the CN
Mm-hmm.
network is also with Ocean, are located in two markets,
Yeah,
which actually have huge digital OH footprints.
yeah.
So it's a natural progression for many of the media operators to adopt the solutions that you offer. Uh, what about markets where the digital OH footprints
Mm-hmm.
are rather limited? I'm now take the example of India.
Yeah.
How would you actually be able to create a huge interest in what you have to offer in a market like India?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the digital penetration definitely is we're dependent on the digital penetration, of
Yeah,
course,
yeah,
right? So because I think we are looking at it from a standpoint of once you have digital place-based networks established or digital out-of-home networks established,
mm,
we play within that
right,
that sort of scenario. Um,
right.
I'm hoping that with proliferation of display screen technologies, and as
Mhm.
markets start adopting the value proposition of digital out of home,
Right.
the adoption rate will increase in markets where the adoption is not there yet. And
Hmm.
once it gets to that point, hopefully we will have a place to play in that space.
All right. In India, the digital OH media networks are
Hmm.
increasing in the transit space, such as
Yeah.
at the airports and
Hmm.
railways,
Yeah.
also at malls, cineplexes,
Yeah.
corporate parks. So if you put all those together, they make up a sizable number.
Yeah.
But that said, uh, for Ultraleap to
Hmm.
really connect with an Indian market, what
Hmm.
would really be the starting point? In the sense, if for the media owners to seriously get interested in your
Hmm.
solutions, what would be the next step that you would advocate?
Yeah, so I think we have been approaching this from a standpoint of establishing beachheads in certain locations. So
Right.
the two beachheads that we've got so far are, a cinema-based network in the US and a media buying company like Ocean in the UK. And
Right.
what we are hoping to do is to create such beachheads in other locations as well. I can't go into specifics about a strategy that we are exploring for India on this call,
Right.
but
Right.
we would approach it from a similar strategy where we would say that, okay, look, we have to start somewhere, and we would possibly work with media owners and operators specifically who where the solution and market fit is good. So for example, cinemas could be a really, really good use case in India also, because
Right.
we can leverage the learnings that we have from the CEN network and directly
Right.
apply them in a different
Right.
geography. Because in the end,
Right.
the concept stays the same. The market
Yeah.
economics will be different, and the patterns of buying might be different. But generally speaking, the same application can be leveraged and applied in a different setting. And so that's sort of our approach, where we have a very targeted approach on enabling certain customers, establishing the beachheads, and then sort of expanding from there.
Great. In any of these applications, have you seen a visible impact in terms of brand advertising and engagement?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about this pilot that we did in LA last year with a big name movie studio and a really large movie theater, which is, the top 4 in terms of attendance in the United States. And we did 2 types of studies. We did an audience analytics study and also a independent market research study that was done by a completely independent third party, as I said. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to analyze what would be the impact of immersive out-of-home advertising or digital out-of-home advertising compared to static or standard digital out-of-home advertising. And we had both qualitative but also quantitative data that we measured from a comparison standpoint between the two. And what we noticed was that there was a measurable increase in a lot of brand metrics. So for example, I've got some written down here because almost 2 times increase in conversion ratio. So the conversion ratio, the way we define that is the number of people who have the opportunity to view a sign compared to the number of people who actually pay attention to the sign. So compared to static out of home, immersive out of home using our technology saw almost a 2x increase in attention, which means it's you're addressing the right people or right consumers with the right message. So it's highly addressable. Up to 33% increase in dwell time, which is a great leading indicator for people to consume the brand's message and hopefully do an action as a follow-up of that. In terms of brand favorability, up to 60% increase in brand awareness. That's a huge number, right? If you think about it and that's an uplift, 60% increase. So these are sort of really interesting numbers that proved the value proposition that led to the engagements with CEN and led to engagements with Ocean. So as I said before, for us, it was, since we are a new technology in a space that hasn't seen this technology before, it was very important and critical for us to establish these value proposition drivers. And we were able to do that with this study that has led to some favorable outcomes for us with the operators and media buyers.
Wonderful. What about the cost part? Because that is something that media operators often worry about. So
So I mean, look, in out of home, the CPMs are out of home commands a really good CPM because of the reach, right? We think that based on the value proposition that we've built and the measurable impact on favorability and purchase intent,
Mm-hmm.
proves or provides a significant uplift to
All
brands
right.
from a
Okay.
messaging standpoint. So when you take that into the calculus of maybe from a CPM to ROI perspective, I think we fit really nicely in that spectrum of from an ROI perspective, based on the uplifts, we can justify that incremental cost.
All right. When all your solutions were envisioned and you started to build the strategies and take them to the market, you or anybody never imagined in this COVID situation that we're all faced with
Yeah.
today. So how would you approach the market given the
Yeah.
circumstances that we are in today?
Yeah, so I mean, look, I think we are all living in very unprecedented times.
Right.
I mean, especially for brands, right? I mean, if you think about it from brands' perspective, they have to think about what is the best possible way to communicate their brand message through channels and through avenues that promote the safety and promote the well-being of consumers, but also
Right.
provide these messages that are, or experiences that are hygienic to consume. From our technology perspective, since we are a contactless technology, it fits really nicely into this solution that a lot of brands and operators and retailers are looking for, where they're looking at solutions for interactive experiences without needing the consumer to touch physical surfaces. And that's where I think a lot of acceleration has happened for us. Internally, we started a task force for just this purpose, to think about what is the best way we can provide our solutions to the market that allow them to operate, but also open safely and go back to business. And this is where we're doing a lot of work on public interfaces. So think about all the digital kiosks that you have in public environments. You mentioned,
Right.
some of the out-of-home environments like airports and malls. Think about digital directories in malls.
Right.
A lot of people, it's the high throughput area, lots of interactions, but these are also screens that can be and are being used for out-of-home advertising as banner ads or as sort of, these different advertising experiences. What we've been trying to do is, using our hand tracking technology, we are able to turn any touchscreen into a non-touch interface without having to change anything, which is a big step for us, because what we want to do is, a lot of operators, retailers, and brands have put a lot of money in these touchscreen interfaces, right? They're thinking about, how do we leverage our investment in infrastructure, but also provide an alternative method to consumers to interact with our solutions or interact with our interfaces more reliably and more safely. And I think that's where we can see an intersection of what our solution can do and what the market and consumers are looking for.
Okay, that's very, very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I would reckon that there would be application in smart city projects as well, right?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting concept. We haven't actively been involved in a smart city project just yet, but it's a very interesting space, as I said, because of 5G. I mean, 5G is coming, at least in the US, pretty soon. And what that's going to do is, that's going to create this infrastructure that allows for multiple, sensors to be placed, and a lot of objects becoming smart right away, right? Which means there's going to be a lot of data that is going to be available for action. I mean, we are already seeing dynamic content play a big role in out of home, right? And especially in digital out of home, where you have, a brand message can change based on the different inputs and stimulus, right? With 5G, it's only going to get more sophisticated. But also, within that environment, you have other applications that will come up, right? Our plan is, as a overall strategy, is to enable the ecosystem. I think what we want to do is to be able to have the ability to enable and influence the ecosystem to adapt our technology. And our hope is that they will stand up our technology as it relates to smart city initiatives in different parts of the world. And that's the channel that we are going through.
That's really sounds great. I think there are two aspects that are, we were waiting to see happen in India. One, of course, is about Indian OH going digital in a big way. But for this COVID crisis, we would have seen much more of that happening. But of course, if you look at the next 2 to 3 years, we expect a significant shift happening towards digital out of home. The second part, of course, is about the smart city projects. A large number of smart city projects have been initiated, and I'm sure it will gather momentum in the next 2 to 3 years. So I'm absolutely certain that there are areas where Ultraleap will hopefully find some very, very interesting engagements in the coming years. We want to hear more and more about what Ultraleap does and hopefully have a good footprint in the Indian market. So thank you very much, Saurabh, for being a part of the Oshua conversation. I look forward to having many more interactions with you and the organization. Thank you once again for being here with us.